Hello again, and I thought we would do this video as part one, part two, because I thought we would do the surface first. And by now you should have gathered your materials for the tutorial. And as you know, I'm using the wallpaper piece that I use a lot for surfaces for some of my projects, like my collage and my painting projects. But I also use it for covering the table. So anyway, I've cut this out in a kind of a small size because I like to use, when I do my little gratitude journals, I don't write a great deal in it. So in other words, I don't write a lot. I write it daily, but I don't like when I do my morning pages. That's different. That's a different kind of journal. That's when I do 3 pages. But this is just, pointers. This is just little things that that I want to reflect on when I do my gratitude journaling. So in this case, I'm using something very small, and I'm also using it because I'm using this size so we can complete the project in this video. Okay, so as I said, you can take and use the primer or a gesso to prime the surface if you want. This is just a way of getting the surface ready for your painting. So I'm just taking just a little bit of, now I don't want you to glop the primer or the gesso onto the surface. I want you just to kind of lightly spread a very light coat on it so that you can, so it dries. Okay, so I'm just taking and taking just a little bit of the primer and just spreading it. Now, it won't completely cover, and that's okay because there's going to be lots of layering that's done on this surface, so it's not important that it covers the words that are on the wallpaper. It's going to be, there's going to be lots of paint and collage materials and all kinds of stuff that's on here, so don't worry about it being completely covered. It's just to make the paper a better surface to do your layering, and it also makes the wallpaper just a little more sturdy. So instead of it, wallpaper is pretty sturdy already, but you'll find that just covering it with just a little bit of this will help. And this is another method when you do, say, an altered book, and you want to alter a page. This is another method. You can put this over your page, like, just your paper page, and it turns it into a really good surface for painting on. Okay, so I've got that on there, and it's just really, really light. So this is the method that I want you to use when you do your own coverage. So it's just a really light surface. It's not like really thick. Okay, so I would dry this with a hair dryer or a heat gun, lightly with a heat gun, so that you can paint over it. But I'm going to just let it dry by itself with, so that we can actually paint on it afterwards. Okay, so I talked about using clip art or using different kinds of things that you can use for embellishing your journal, and this is an example of something that I kind of collected. These are little things that I actually collected from oh gosh, it was like a One Spirit catalog at one point. And I just put this on a sheet of a paper and printed it, so now it's actually printed. It's actually on my computer, so this is just a second print. So anyway, as you can look at here, there's little things that I might want to cut out that would represent gratitude to me. Here's one that says, miracles are natural, the natural order of things. This is just little words that really mean something to me. Now you can also cut out things like, find things that you find on Pinterest. When you go on Pinterest, you can find all kinds of things that you can download and use for clip art. And as long as you're not using the images or whatever you use for, selling, it's okay. It's not, I don't think it's a problem. So, okay, here's one that I think is really cool. It says, make every day a juicy day. And that kind of like means that take the juice out of life, like really savor it. So it's very similar to being grateful. So this is a nice little saying. I like that. Here's one that says, what makes life more worth living. Okay, so I like that too. I think these little affirmations are really good to put on your journal because why are we doing a journal that's like this? Well, yeah, you can just use a blank book and you can just write in the blank book. That's fine. And I think that's okay. But if you want to make it really special and you want to make it so that it's really personally your own energy, I think this is a great way to do that. So here's one that says, with love, all things are possible. And I think that's a cool little affirmation as well. Okay, so I'm cutting these little things out, but I mean, if you were to do this yourself, it's probably a good idea to cut them out ahead of time. I'm doing it on the video so you can just kind of get an idea of what I do. Here is one called Celebrate Life. I like that. I like that a lot. Now, you don't have to use clip art. You can actually write your own words on your journal after it's painted, after you've got the surface painted. You can also do what's called invisible writing. What you can do is after you get the gesso dry, your first layer of your surface dry, then you can write something on your journal that's real special but you want to keep secret. And then after you write that on your journal, you can cover it up with paint or collage material. And so it's inside it's like a part of the layering of your journal, but it's not something that everybody sees. So that's another thing. You can actually write a letter to yourself. You write a letter to yourself as to something real personal that you want to put on your gratitude journal that, again, you don't show everybody, you don't show anybody, you just, it's just something that's really special to you and personal and it's secret. Here's one that says enlightenment in our midst. That kind of reminds me of the fact that, if we keep our eyes open, we can see things so much more, and keep our not only our physical eyes open, but also keep our inner eye open. We can see much, much more in life. And that's a part of being grateful. It's like sometimes, being grateful is just a matter of perception. It's a matter of how we perceive things. It's a matter of, like we can wake up in the morning and it can be like a gray sky and we can say, oh wow, what a rainy, yucky day. Or we can say, oh, how wonderful the rain is, there's rain and I can read a book, or I can curl up and just, under a blanket. It's thinking of it in a different way, trying to think of it in a different way rather than a negative, in a negative way. So it's like changing your perception, changing the way you think about something is changing your perception. In my opinion, if you change the way you think, you are. Okay, So this is not totally dry yet, but I'm going to let this dry a little bit, and uh, then I'm going to put the metallic paint on it. Okay, the second thing we're going to do is we're going to cut out different kinds of like images that we want to use in your journal. So in this case, I'm going to be cutting out just some little shapes that represent mandalas, and I think mandalas are really very powerful. And so these are little, almost like little discs. They're from the Rose Window, and I think it'd be really appropriate for my my gratitude journal. So you can choose whatever collage material you want to use. Think about symbols that are important to you. They can be anything from spiritual symbols to animals, animals that are special to you. Maybe like an animal spirit that represents an animal spirit. It can be anything like from nature, like plants or flowers. It can also be just, things you paint yourself and you put on your journal. So there's different ways of doing that, and this is what I'm doing just for this particular journal. I'm actually doing this for this journal, but I've done different things. When I do my journals, I do different things. But this is just one of the things I do, too. Okay, so again, you probably need to cut this out ahead of time, and I would do that ordinarily. I would have everything cut out before I sit down and start my journal. But in this case, what I'm going to do is just cut these little pieces out so that I can use this as a part of my gratitude journal. Okay, the other thing that I want you to think about is the reason why we're doing this gratitude journal is so that you have a place to write in, to do retrospect in. I do this before I go to bed, is just retrospect the day. And also to make it a part of your own spiritual practice. You might think about, okay, well, during this month, I really want to focus on the energy and the theme or the subject of gratitude. So how can I do that in my own practice? How can I make this like a ritual? I don't like the word ritual. I like the word practice better. So how can I make this a part of my own practice? And if you're thinking about, developing a practice, this would be a really good time to think about what kind of practice you want to do. When I have a practice, I do things on a daily basis that just really grounds my day, and one of the things I do is morning pages. And I'm not sure if everybody's heard about morning pages, but it's based on Julia Cameron's Artist Way, and she recommended, when I read the book, she recommended that you do morning pages, and morning pages isn't like really deep writing necessarily. It's really stream of consciousness writing, so that you're just writing down 3 pages. Sometimes the stuff is like gibberish, like, okay, why am I even writing this? But it doesn't matter what it is, it doesn't matter whether it's gibberish or it's something. Sometimes, when you're writing, it becomes much deeper. Sometimes I get, my ideas from doing my morning pages, like even a project that I might want to work on comes through the morning pages. Or sometimes when I'm writing morning pages and I'm really writing about what I'm doing or what I want to do, something deeper does come out, and maybe a feeling that I really don't want to deal with comes out in writing. So I think writing is a really good part of your practice. And I've been writing since I was 19, since I can remember I started in when an English teacher recommended that we do a journal, and that's when I started writing. But morning pages is one thing, and then I also do meditation, and I followed Deepak Chopra's 21-day meditation. I think it's a really good focus. You know, he has a wonderful, like he talks about something, and then he uses that in his mantra, and the mantra then becomes a part of your own meditation. And then I take that into a meditation journal. So I take that thought that I've gotten from my meditation into my meditation journal. So that's another thing that I do. And then, of course, I use affirmations. And affirmations can be anything from something that I listen to on Amazon, like on the television on Amazon, or something I find on YouTube, or I also use affirmations that are my own personal affirmations. So it varies, but I use that as a part of my practice. And so the things that I use for practice, I I think that when you do your practice, it really helps you to stay tuned in. It really helps you to stay centered. And meditation is a real important part of being centered. And so I would recommend that if you are going to do practice, is to just really experiment with different things and see what works for you. You know, everybody's different, and so you're going to have different needs. Okay, so I've got these little things cut out, and I got the words cut out, and the black paint should be dry by now. If it's not, I'm going to turn the video off and dry it just a little bit and then come back. Okay, my surface is dry now, and so now I can do my next layer. I'm going to use some of these paints actually these were left over from my project, so I'm going to use some of these paints here that are just going to put just a little bit of color on my my journal. So you can see also that the black paint shows through the black surface, the different kinds of things that I created with the stencil does show through, so it gives a real interesting look to it. And see, okay, so I'm using these this is basically just paint that I created with a glaze, and so it's not perfect, but it's paint that's left over and it's just a little bit of color. So I'm not going to worry about the color being perfect, because I can always come back and put other colors on it. The thing about paint is that you can always paint over it. Like, you paint on something and if you don't like that color, you can always paint over it. Or you can show the color underneath it. That's cool too. Now I have some of this paint that's left over from my friend brought this from a little holiday party she did. And she brought all this leftover paint, so I'm going to use that too. She doesn't throw anything away like I do. So she's got some paints in here that I can use. Ooh, pretty. Gold glitter paint. Oh, nice. Okay, so I'm not going to use this really thick. In fact, I think what I'm going to do is put the stencil back over it. and put the gold paint over that too. Now the surface is not completely dry, but it doesn't matter because I'm just going to be putting some gold paint back over it. So I'm using the stiff brush again, and I'm not putting a lot of paint on my brush. I'm just putting just a little bit of paint on my brush, and I'm going to just use the stencil again and do another layer. Now what I've got is I've got the layer that I did with the black paint, then I've got a little bit of color, and now I'm going to do some gold over that. She's got some green there too. I might actually use some of that green. So now, if you do your when you do your journal, if you want to think about color, think about a particular color, your favorite color, or the color of the chakras, or the color of a particular thing that means, you could look up on Google. You can actually Google what the color of gratitude is. There's people that actually have information on color and the color of different things. So I'm sure that gratitude has a color too. I'm not sure what the color of gratitude would be, but maybe it would be a combination of red and orange. Red being kind of the love color, the love, like you think about love as in the color red. And red and orange being energy. I don't know. But anyway, that's just one way that you could actually do the color of your journal. Is pick a color. Pick your favorite color, or pick a color that means something to you. Okay, so I've got the gold on there now, and you notice that I have been putting this stencil in the water because paint dries on the stencil. Now sometimes it's not a problem, but in this case, because I'm using it fairly wet, I want the stencil to be dry. And I have on my floor, I've just got this old shirt that my kids use when they paint, and I just grabbed it for wiping off the stencil. Okay, so I'm also going to bring my dryer a little bit closer so that I can dry it. Okay, so that's fairly dry. It's not completely dry, but that's okay. The next color I'm going to use is, I think she's got some blue here. Okay, there's a little bit of blue and a little bit of green here that I can use. You can also put more thought into creating your surface, or you can do what's called intuitive. When I do something, sometimes I don't really think a lot of what I'm doing. I just basically just use my intuition to put something together. So in this case, what I've done now is I put the green over it, but I'm going to also put another stencil surface over that too. And just building up, I'm just building up layers. Now remember, this is just the background, so it's not going to matter because we're going to be putting other things over it. But I'm doing the background so that, first of all, it covered up a lot of the words that are here. So I'm doing that too. And some of the stencil part does not show, and that's okay too. Okay. So as you can see, I don't know if you can see it. Well, I'm going to take a picture of this, but close up. But as you can see, the surface now is shiny almost, so that's what I wanted. I wanted to look like it was like a like very sacred. So I'm going to be putting all kinds of things on it that represents sacredness to me. So I'll be probably finding things on the internet to do that. Um, but as I said, this is just our first video um, that I'm making, so that you can kind of start your own surface and your own, the journal, and create your own surface. And then I will be back, and I will do the second part of the tutorial. Okay, so I thank you, and bye bye.